Hello.
Hello, crew.
Good morning,
Hello.
everyone.
Good.
How's it
morning.
going?
Still waking up. I'm so ready to talk Akakiri.
Yes, same here.
So hello, everyone. Hello, Stuart. Oh, you're skipping work for this week's band patch as well.
True fan.
We will not be
today-
held responsible, Stuart.
Yeah, seriously. Today we're going to be talking about the final episode of Star Wars Visions, Akakiri, and then, I mean, we can also just talk about, Visions recap as a whole. What do y'all think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Awesome. So I'm Xanthe. This is Justin. This is James, who has his tabla. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I know.
First of all, what'd you all think of Akakiri?
I loved this episode, actually. I personally really, really liked it. I thought it was a very interesting note to end on if you watch the series from... I guess you technically don't have to watch the series from start to beginning, because they're all little shorts, but if you did, it's a very interesting note to end on. In a way.
That's a good way. Yeah, it was an interesting note to end on. That's for sure.
Yeah, agreed. It's when you think about when they're arranging the order of these episodes, and you end on this, spoiler alert, when you end on this kind of dark turn of events, with the... I gotta be honest, I need some reminder. There's another thing I want to say about this episode, which was that it was hard for me to focus on what was actually going on in the episode. But I don't know any of the characters' names, and I never absorbed it. So what's the main male Jedi's name?
Tsubaki.
Yeah,
Tsubaki. That's right. So it's when Tsubaki goes over to the, turns over and kind of surrenders himself to the dark side. That's like all right, and that was Star Wars Visions, everyone. All right, it's such a dark down note, right? Isn't it? It's
I remember watching and going. Yeah. No, I remember watching and going, oh. Okay. Here we are.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I would love to just understand or not. I'm just very curious about the order of the entire series as a whole, because I feel like some of the more similar episodes happened pretty close together, which is odd too. Like if I was arranging these, I'd be like, let me keep the ones that are very similar like a little further apart, so they don't feel so redundant. And like I said, this episode is kind of an interesting closer. But I really love it. I really love the episode. I really do. But I will talk about this. I honestly, this episode was very, very tough for me to focus on the actual content. Considering the and that rarely happens. But this was just such a specific choice of score and it's so close to me that I was completely... my other brain was just thinking about did they really do this? Wait, am I really hearing what I'm hearing right now? So yeah, I was kind of blown away multiple viewings in a row by the musical choice, that it stopped me from being able to even like I said, I don't know any of the characters' names. I still don't, and I prepared to watch it a number of more times to talk about it today, and I still don't know any of the characters' names. So anyway, yeah.
So what you're referring to, of course, is the fact that it was an all tabla score.
Yeah, almost all tabla score. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Tabla forward score.
Yeah, incredibly tabla forward.
Yeah.
Score. Yeah.
Scored by U-zhaan.
U-zhaan. Who is a tabla player, right?
Yeah, he's an amazing Japanese tabla player. Does a lot of hip hop collaborations, and does some really amazing hip hop tracks where the entire beat is just composed of combinations of tabla sounds, and so it's rapping over the tabla sounds.
So this was right in his wheelhouse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you explain can you like give us a little primer on this instrument?
Yeah. So everybody, watching now and watching later, this is the tabla, okay? And you would say that this instrument, these two drums, is called tabla, okay, as opposed to tablas. It would be that would be kind of the plural form is the word tabla, and it consists of two drums, a low drum and a high drum. Now, often the high drum is also referred to as the tabla, and the low drum is referred to as the baya. So that can make things kind of confusing. Okay. However, there's another name for the high drum, which is the dayan, okay, which starts with the D. D as in David. So low drum, high drum, okay? Low drum is typically play with your like non-dominant hand, and your high drum is usually play with your dominant hand. And it's a drum that's found in classical Indian music, and specifically northern classical Indian music, often referred to as Hindustani classical music. South Indian music is referred to as Carnatic music and doesn't typically feature tabla. This is an instrument that is predominantly used in North Indian classical music. So very like formalized system of music in India, as opposed to like a folk style music. This isn't really a folk instrument. This is this is like the oboe, like isn't very often found outside of the classical realm. I've now like
we're doubled. Oh no!
I've taken over Xanthe. Oh, that's nice of you, Xanthe. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. Oh, I get the top rung today. And so, as in lots of areas of classical Indian music, this instrument is informed by a language that indicates the sounds on the instrument. So as opposed to reading notation and reading meaning sheet music, right? Classical Indian musicians will do things orally and through speaking through language. They have a really involved melodic structure called raga, which involves combinations of scales, bends between notes, and specific orders in which you can navigate the scales. And also this is a raga or a scale that we play only at night, and you don't play it any other time of the day, right? Which is really interesting. But the tabla has a really deep language of actual syllables, spoken syllables that indicate the sounds in the drum. So I'll give you a couple examples. So we've got ge, okay, which is a low drum, low sound. We've got na, which is on the edge of the high drum. So that would be ge na, right? We've got tin, or tune, sometimes referred to as tune, which is hitting that low resonant sound. And then if I take ge and na and put it together, I get ta, which is D-H-A, ta, right? So we also have the combinations of different sounds equal new sounds, okay? Mm-hmm. So da, so ge na da would be that, ge na da, 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 right? Then we have te, and then ki, or ka, or lots of different sounds start with the letter K. And so te, ke, okay? And when you put those into a fast combination, you can get
We definitely heard that in the episode.
Yes, there's lots of that. And so if I take some of these sounds, so let me give you, okay. Let me give you one. Okay, let me think. Okay, so you can see how that, if I said you can hear it on the drum. Cool. And also a lot of the expression from this instrument comes from bending the pitch of the left-handed drum, using being able to slide the hand, which basically cuts off the amount of resonating space, making it a higher pitch. So as I drag my hand forward, it gives you that.
Would you say that we heard all of the techniques that you have demonstrated? Would you say that we heard all of those in the episode?
Absolutely, like a huge amount of them, and used incredibly frequently. Yeah. So that's a little bit background on basically the only instrument we're going to be talking about today.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, James.
Yeah.
Okay, what are those black like pads on the drum?
Oh, good. So these are called the gob, and these are actually made out of a combination of like rice paste and iron, metallic iron that they put in through. That basically makes the head a little heavier and makes it resonate with that clear pitch. Otherwise, it would be kind of focuses the overtones a little bit. And it also is a for the right hand, it is actually a playing surface. So to get that really right. So that is what's creating that dum 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 dum. And there is when I play on the edge, oftentimes, if you can see, one of my fingers actually mutes that sound, so you don't hear the. What's that pitch? Xanthe, you have a better ear than I. Is it that pitch? Am I singing the higher one?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Okay, so you hear how we have that note there, right? And then that's usually like a whole step above the main resonating pitch of the drum. So check that out. So if I mute it, da 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 da. If I make it ring, da 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 da. And then I mute it with my finger.
Okay. So it is like a whole step.
Exactly. It's usually that's the relationship that it causes. Yeah. So you'll get like. So right now you can't hear it because I'm muting it.
Oh, so that's how like even with just those two drums, just with you get how many different pitches? Like quite a few.
Well, yeah, and you can get a lot with the
Because of
low.
your-
I will say that the low drum isn't typically tuned to a specific pitch, but the right hand is. So if I've got if I'm playing with a melodic
Right, because
Indian
in the
player,
score there was like definitely at least there was like one track that sounded really like what you're playing, where it was like centered around like that C, and some of them felt like a little bit different, but there was one that really felt like that, like what you're playing now.
yeah, I'm gonna we'll talk about that. Too.
Oh, okay, cool.
So if I put on like a little loop of like a melody, so it'll always be the tabla is always tuned to like typically the tonic of whatever key you're in, or like the fifth is very often. It's often so you'll either have like, can you hear it? Right, or the fifth. So if I put this in D instead, what the pitch of this drum is an A. So right. So those are that's typically how you would tune your tableaus. Whatever key you're in, you would tune it. And I'd say these drums get probably a range of like a minor third on either side at the most of like whatever their the pitch that they want to be is. So if I wanted to play in like, if I wanted this to be like an F sharp, I'd have to really crank it down, and it would probably lose the integrity of the drum if I really brought it that low. So you usually want to have a lot of different tablas so you can play in a lot of different keys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you said we were going to talk about some other thing in a second. Was it going to be related to the fact that some of the tracks felt like there were maybe what would you call it? More drums involved?
You say more drums or more like actual physical drums involved? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, here's I guess a question like before we did y'all prepare any examples to talk about?
No.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did actually. We'll see what.
I want to hear. Because I think I'm guessing that one of. If I guess
I could whip out like a couple obvious ones. Like,
Okay. Well,
but-
let's hear what Justin has to
Yeah.
offer.
Okay, so
I've been talking for a long time, so.
No. I've been so excited for this episode because the tabla is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
It's such a cool instrument. I have bongos, but that's not quite the same at all. So I attempted to recreate the rhythms, but I had to. I
Ooh.
programmed this. This
Dude,
is the
I'm so
worst,
let's go.
the worst tabla representation ever. But let's see here. Crap, which one? Okay, here's one. Let's see if this comes through.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then I had to get the.
Yes, Justin. Yes.
Tried to
That
get
is
the pitches as
cool.
best as we could. It's a conga. It's a retuned conga.
So this is really interesting, and
That's from like when that's when there's that shot of like the party taking place.
Right. Float, I think, is the track.
right. And so this is what's really okay, and this is one of the things that was distracting about this episode is there are lots and lots of examples of just straight up traditional playing in this episode, like straight up rhythms that are not newly composed rhythms necessarily for this show, but like folk and classical rhythms that exist, like repertoire that which was really strange to me, which really stuck out, and that's why it was so distracting, because it wasn't just like the tabla was the instrument being played, it was also like traditional repertoire. And this is an example of this rhythm is called kaherva, okay, and this is a folk rhythm played on this instrument. It's played on a lot of different instruments, but often if tabla is used in a folk setting, it's playing this rhythm, and it's in the THeka, which is we talked about the language on this instrument, which is the syllables. The THeka would be the syllables that you use to describe a folk rhythm or a classical rhythm. And so the THeka for this is dagina tinakidin, dagina tinakidin, dagina tinakidin.
Teach that to us. Wait.
Yeah, so it's da,
Da.
ge,
Okay.
na,
Na.
tin,
Tin.
na,
Na.
ga,
Ga.
din, na. Dage nati na gadina.
How do you spell that?
Okay. Let me
Da.
write it out real quick. DHA.
DHA.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm writing
Space GE.
Okay.
Space NA.
Uh-huh.
Dagina. Space TI.
Uh-huh.
Space GE.
Okay.
Am I doing dagina T? Oh, sorry. I skipped one. After TI is na NA.
Uh-huh.
And then space GA,
Uh-huh.
and then space DHIN,
Okay.
and then space na. Dagina tinakidina.
Okay. Bring it up on the screen.
Nagadina.
Right. Dagina tina gadina.
Uh-huh. Dagina tina kadina. Sorry, I mean, I'm like kadina.
So K-A.
Dagina tinakadina. Dagina tinakadina. Dagina tinakadina.
So should I make that a K?
Yeah, it's a K.
Okay.
Kadina. And so this is, but you don't always play that THeka exactly the same, but it's the general feel. So you might play like. Or. And maybe right. And so you hear this in a lot of film music. So much film music has this groove in it. And so this groove that he's playing is just a folk rhythm, which I found interesting because we're
Folk
focusing.
in what context?
So in terms of this is played in like folk settings, in terms of like communal
what does
music.
Folk setting me. Okay.
So when you
Music.
talk about folk music, we're thinking like music that's not played in like a classical formal court high class setting. This is like
but folk can mean
amongst
many things. Like that doesn't sound like a funeral song or like a funeral beat, is it? Like, is it like mostly parties, or is it kind of relegated? You said like some things are like maybe only a night
celebratory
rhythm,
music.
or like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like I said, this is not a classical rhythm. So when we were talking about like
that
music
was
played, that was a classical. What we're talking about was classical
Okay.
ragas. So this is a little less formal than that, right? So we talk about like, okay, this is a cadenza is something that's played in a symphony, right? But you wouldn't call like an open solo played by like an Appalachian folk a violinist a cadenza, right? You wouldn't call it that. You would call it an open violin solo or something, right? But so we're just talking about the differences between like classical music and music played by people that aren't like studying it seriously. I know this is more about how it intersects with their society and their normal day-to-day culture, as opposed to people that go and study this music classically and like learn how to play it. And it used to be played by court musicians, meaning played for the royalty, classical musician. This Kaherva rhythm is not considered serious classical music.
So the Kaderva rhythm, which is the Dagina Tinakadina, is like in the setting that it was used in the episode, which was like the party type of thing.
Yeah,
is that
kind
of
pretty
like
fitting
when it would be used?
Sure, yeah, sure. Celebratory, played by normal folks, right? And that's I found that pretty fitting, but also pretty interesting because it's not even like a new spin on it. It's like straight up a Kaherva rhythm, right? It's like a straight up Indian classical rhythm, just like slapped in the middle of Star Wars, right? As opposed to like, hey, let's use the tabla to like make something that kind of sounds like, but let's like use other, you know what I mean? It's like using a very specific. It's like if all of a sudden you just like you saw a star, it'd be very similar to like if you saw a wedding in Star Wars and all of a sudden like the band started going, bam, bam, ba-dam, bam, you'd be like, are they literally just playing Here Comes the Bride right now? So I mean, it's not that much like that, but it is quite similar in that this is basically a folk traditional rhythm, right? So yeah, so we've got this.
Is it sort of like how that singing was in the duel?
Singing duel.
Like the Bulgarian singing was like.
Well, I couldn't tell because I don't know that music very well.
Okay.
Right. So,
because what you're describing sounds like a lot of things just being are dropped into stuff.
I guess that's one of those things is when you're privy to something, it like those. I guess this is more like to the conversation is like for me, this stuff is so personal because I've studied this stuff so intimately. Like it was distracting, but I imagine it wasn't to lots and lots and lots of other people, right? Because you're like able to be like, hey, that's this, right? It's kind of like you're like a little bit seeing the man behind the curtain when you know something specific about the music you're listening to, right? It's probably like anybody that went to Cal Arts and did like Balinese or like Javanese ensemble. Anytime they hear like gamelan being used in a horror movie, they're like, hey, that's like, you know what I mean? But like once you kind of know like what you're hearing, it sometimes loses that effect that maybe the composer had in mind. Sometimes, right? So,
although, okay, I'm curious because I'm thinking like for someone like U-zhaan scoring this, for whom tabla is like his instrument.
Yeah.
Like maybe can you imagine you scoring something like this and just because like you think in terms of tabla a lot of the time.
Yeah.
When you get to like a celebration scene, like where it like naturally comes out that way, like that's what you think of, like that's how you would score celebration.
It's true, right? Because there's an intimate relationship between like the music that we assign for different reasons in culture and like the subconscious feeling that we have around that music, right? Like we might just think about certain instruments in a celebratory moment because that's what we're accustomed to hearing in a celebration. I don't know, like yeah, I think there's a lot of connection between how we're. So yeah, I would say, you know, a composer like U-zhaan probably thought like, hey, let's put like a folk rhythm here because that's what I'm seeing. So yeah, I think that's definitely an obvious choice for sure.
So what did
It's
you
cool.
think of like other tracks or like other parts of the score?
So yeah, maybe I can do a little guessing game with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So you already got the right. Okay. So all right. Here's another one.
Is this when they're like traveling on the mountainside?
Yeah. Yeah.
Through the
Exactly.
forest, they're sneaking past the guards, they're covering up. Yeah,
That part reminded
yeah.
me of
Second.
Mulan.
Yeah. All right. So this is another interesting moment. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm playing right now. Okay. So we talked about Gaharva, which is a folk rhythm.
Uh-huh.
So this right now, what I just played, might be the most played and famous tabla rhythm that's ever existed. Okay, that is in this score. I guess that's what I'm saying is like it's so interesting that these choices, because some of these things are like, whoa, they're just like straight up playing that right now. So this is what's called Teen Tall. Okay, Teen Tall is a tala. Okay, so we talked about raga, which are the different combinations of notes and melodies, are the approach to melody, right? And melodic content in any music. Tala is the approach to rhythm cycle, like basically a time signature. Like if lots of music in Western music is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, and 4, and right. Or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. In North Indian classical music, we think about this idea of a rhythm cycle, and we assign a certain amount of beats. Now, Teen Tal is what's called the mother tal, meaning it's the most common cycle used, I guess you could say the most common time signature. You wouldn't say that, but if you wanted to think about it like that, you could.
Did I spell it right?
Sure, yeah. That's one way to spell it.
Okay.
It's the most common rhythm cycle, and it's 16 beats. Okay, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, and then we repeat that. And the syllables, like I said, there's always like those language syllables that go with the rhythms that we have are ha, din, da, ha, din, da, na, tin, na, din, da. Okay.
Oh. It changed at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's so here's, and that's what I was gonna say. So this is what's this and like many talas in North Indian music has what's called a body, when we have the low drum in there, and then a kali, meaning empty, when we take the low drum out. So we go for basically for beats 1 through 8, we have the low drum, and basically for beats 9, 10, 11, and 12, we take it out, and then we put it back in for beats 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now.
Okay.
And depending on how you're playing it, you might take it out 1 beat early, or take it out 1 beat late and bring it back in 1 beat late, from what I just said. But it might be just easiest to think about in groups of 4. So 4 groups of with the drum, 4 groups of with the drum, 4 groups are 4 beats with the drum, 4 beats with the drum, 4 beats without the drum, 4 beats with the drum. So
okay.
with the drum, it's like AAB form.
Uh-huh.
Now we take it out. Then we put it back in. So here we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it's out and we sound empty and we bring it back in here. Now more traditionally what you would do is instead of taking it out on beat 9, you would take it out on beat 10.
Okay.
All right, so you basically play the first beat of that third group with it, and then you take it out, and then you bring it back on the second beat of the last group before. So it would be like
Okay,
this:
so it's
1,
offset by-
2, 3, exactly 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Still in. Now it's out. 3, 4. Now it's out. Now it's in. Here we go. Okay.
Got it.
And so what U-zhaan is playing in this moment is straight up like, I'm trying to liken it to something. It's like, I guess it's not really like this, but it's kind of like, it's like hearing someone just play like a major scale, like da da da, like in the score. Like I guess it's just such a like a ubiquitous
but
rhythm.
it's a rhythm, but it's defined by its rhythm, not by its tone.
Sure,
so
but
not necessarily that, but
So maybe
sure, but I
like
will say that like to any tabla player listening, they're just like, oh, they're just playing like tinta, like and it's, I guess the function of the rhythm is so elementary, right? Or like, and like
it's like a vamp. It's like a vamp, a rhythmic.
but it's
vamp.
like it's not the same as like playing just a simple rock groove. It's like not the same as
Okay,
that. It's not
because-
just being like, it's not the same as just going boom and like you could be like, oh, that's a groove.
Okay,
But
question.
this is so much more specific to like a specific tal that it was almost like, wow, I'm just like listening to teen tal right now.
Is
And
it
the
sort
other-
of
yeah,
like,
go ahead.
is there usually something else played with it, or is it usually just that?
It's usually an accompaniment for a melodic player. And
Okay, so is it kind
so
of
like, yeah,
like-
I'll give you an example. So if
Like hearing like a totally like.
I guess it's even more specific than that. That's
Okay,
what I'm
okay.
saying. It's like so much more specific than that. It's so like, it's yeah. I was just gonna bring this up. So every melodic North Indian player has this app. Probably has the same app on their phone, which is iTabla,
Yeah.
and they just
Even
basically
I
put
have that
this.
for tuning.
I know, Tabla, yeah.
They basically have this groove just on their phone. This exact groove that they practice over. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like hearing a metronome almost like on the track. But I'm not I'm not cheapening it. I'm not saying that the
No.
effect isn't
Yeah,
great
yeah.
and that it's not a great choice. But I'm just saying that like I keep saying, bringing this back to like when I'm watching this as a
it's
tabla player, I'm
very
just like,
traditional.
yeah, it's just so it's so, and it's such a specific rhythm. So anyway, so we have the folk rhythm in the village, and now we have like a super uber classical groove, like the classical groove, like the mother of all classical grooves, is sitting there right there on the score, while they're going across
while the guards are accompanying this exiled princess.
Yeah. And I will say that whenever the Jedi and maybe this is just me making connections where there are none, but whenever the Jedi are on screen, there's always classical style repertoire seemingly, and and outside of that, there's like either, like I said, specific folk rhythms or things that are a little bit outside the realm of classical. But whenever like the Jedi, and we'll talk about the first cue, the intro as well. That's also another specific classical thing in the beginning of the episode too. So it's interesting. There's like a something with the court, and it's it happens in this like pretty regal. The final film fight happens in this like regal setting, so it kind of fits that there's all this like heavy classical music involved here.
Is it also classical like when it's the flashback with the princess, where it's like, or whatever that part?
So yeah, so we'll talk about that. So that's a technique called tabla tarang. Okay.
And that's all played with tabla.
Yes, and so tabla tarang is when this sound of the tabla gives that definite pitch. Imagine if I had like 10 of these, okay, in different pitches, and do 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 do. However, this is done in a recording studio, and I'm sure that there's like pitch correction going on. I'm sure there's like little things added to the to that to make it sound exactly when you produce something, you're not gonna just like, hey, let me work at like my absolute butt off to make these tabla completely perfect and the exact sound I want. I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of that, but I'm sure like after the fact they cleaned it up like crazy. I mean, it's also possible that
Although,
it's
like,
very
I also feel
possible.
like if there were someone who maybe had it more dialed in, it probably would be U-zhaan.
No. Yeah, I'm not saying that like he didn't tune the hell out of his tabla, but I'm saying like there's actually a good chance that those are all like he sampled every one of his drums and then placed them exactly where he wants to, because he's a producer. Like I don't think work smart, not hard, right? But this is a technique done like with actual tabla players will surround themselves with a huge amount of tabla and play melodies and ragas with their tabla called tabla tarang, and tarang means wave, like a wave. And
I like that.
tabla,
Tabla.
and yeah, exactly. So really specific sound again, like and I say that when I've heard a lot of U-zhaan's stuff, he uses this technique a lot because that's the way you get melodies with these amazing instruments. Because obviously you're limited when you've got just those 3 pitches, right? In terms of doing anything melodic with these instruments. So yeah, another.
Do you think that was the only
yeah.
track with tabla taran?
Oh no. So lots of his stuff, he's overdubbing other tabla on top. Like in the beginning, in the beginning track, we'll talk about that one. The was it? Yeah, that's something like that. Something like that. He does this crazy groove, right? That's in 12 beats, and then on top of that, he's putting the dong ding, those like different tabla that he's layering on top of it. He's not playing those exactly like that. That's definitely multi-tracked. But he's got like little melodies accenting everything on top of it, which is really cool.
Are the woo woo? Is that anything?
No, I think
Okay.
that's just... what if it was? I mean, it could be,
know.
right? It could be. I could be like, yeah, but the woo woos are very.
So that what you just played, which is reprised again later, which is like the battle track.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? I mean, okay, well, it was like it's more frantic. Obviously, there's like the whoops. It's very fast. It's mainly just, I don't know, the normal tabla setup with the overdubs. Yeah.
So this is a very specific type of tabla composition.
Oh, okay.
Again, that's what I'm saying, y'all. That's what I'm trying to say with this episode. It's like if you study tabla, you're just like listening to like somebody like do the like hit the classics like in this score.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
That's genuinely how I listen to a lot of music.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to hear. I don't know, like it kind of crystallizes more things to hear you talk about.
Sure.
To hear you break it down.
Okay, so this composition, and remember we talked about Tin Tall, which was da din din da da din din da na tin tin na da din. And so we have these parts where the drum is in, the low drum is in, and the times when we mute the low drum, right? And so in a typical kind of rolling type of composition, there's 2 types of okay, so I'm glad you put that on screen. There's 2 types of compositions typically that are kind of formatted this way, or not 2, but there's 2 very common ones, and one of them is called Kaida and one of them is called Rela. And so a Kaida is typically a slower tempo one, so that would be something like so pay attention to my low drum, and here it comes in the beginning, comes out in the middle, and comes back at the end, right? See how I muted it for like 2/3 or 3/4 of the way in? So a Rela is a fast composition, and it's typically using techniques that may allow you to be able to go really fast. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Let me do one. So pay attention again to my low drum, how it starts in the beginning, cuts out in the halfway or like 3/4 way through, and then comes back. Hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Rela, you'll hear that. So that would be right? So you hear when I got soft, that's kind of the taking that drum out. This is a Rela that's in 12 beats in this this episode. 12-beat tala, we talked about teen tal, which is 16 beats. 12-beat tala is called ektal, okay? And that is and it goes sorry. Din din daga dedicate tuna kata daga dedicate dina. Din din daga dedicate tuna kata daga dedicate dina. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. That would be the pattern that you would play, and this Rela is in that cycle that he's playing in the beginning. And so with something like this, I'm not so good at tabla that I can just like listen to this. I'm not like an expert at this instrument. So some obviously masters at this instrument be able to listen, just be able to pick this up, but I couldn't. What
was the 16-beat one? Teen tal.
So that's the 16 beat like the teen tal syllables. Or the composition that I did.
Earlier the Cameling track, you said it was on the 16 syllables.
Teen tal, yes.
Okay.
So da din din da da din din da da din din da din din da. So that was in teen tal, and that was just playing the structure of the tal, meaning like the phrases that you would say that indicate the time signature. This is actually a composition written in a 12-beat cycle now, as opposed to the structure of the tal. So the structure of the tal is din din daga dega tuna kata daga dega dina. However, the what's being played in the battle Rela is a composition that would be felt in 12 beats in this tal. So it's like this. It's like something like this. It's so hard. Yeah. So sorry. It's really hard. He's a very good tabla player. And it's probably not that. That's like the James found the easy way to play something that sounds like that version of it. It's probably a much harder composition than that. But it's so if you can keep 12 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right? But he plays it like 10 times faster than that. It's like something like that, okay? And so he's playing a 12 beat, right? Really cool rhythm. Really keeping that fast Rela. And this is usually like that. If you see a tabla player play a solo, they'll end those towards the end. They'll play the Rela, which is like their fast thing because it's really exciting, right?
Okay.
And so U-zhaan is just like shredding a Rela, like a classical composition, like in a Star Wars show. This is all blowing my mind that this happened. That somebody made a Star Wars anime show and there's just a dude playing like straight up gnarly like classical Indian tabla as the score. Like it kind of blows my mind that this exists. So cool. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Okay, so we talked Battle Rela, we talked Cameling, we talked Float, which, okay, remind me what that
I don't know
was.
the names of any of the tracks, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. The like party one, the Daginatina Kadina.
Yeah, that's the Kaherva folk rhythm.
How do you spell Kaherva?
What is it? Keherwa. I'm terrible at spelling. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is just spoken to me. Yeah, so it's Keherwa. I got it right the first time. Keherwa.
And that's the rhythm.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, these are some of my, obviously like very specific observations. I am very curious at how this all came off to someone that like hasn't like nerded out on tabla their whole like for the last
Anokoro, you said that was just the tabla. What's it called?
Are you talking? Is that the one with the tabla
Tarang.
tarang?
Yeah.
Tarang, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
what was
really
the second
beautiful.
word?
Tarang, so Tarang.
Okay, and that's okay.
And there's some really beautiful videos of people doing that live, and it's just so cool to see. Uh,
Cool. Okay.
um,
And now the super frantic one. Okay, that sounded to me like fast tap dancing. I don't know. What was
yeah.
that? What was up with that? It was toward the end.
Towards the end,
The fall. I
Was
think it was
that just
called the
another like
fall.
Rela?
like the credit sequence, or
Yeah,
during
the
the fight?
fall.
Is
When
that
Yeah, it was when
Go ahead.
it was when Masago, like when the Sith and the Jedi are fighting, or like when the whole when the thing is happening, right before he turns to the right before he.
Oh, right when he cuts down Miso by accident.
Yeah, and it's like.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, it's probably. I think I know what you're talking about. I think he does like a.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he's just playing kind of fast notes and doing his pitch glissandi on his.
Do you think that was just like
Right.
improv? Like.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's probably sat down with in his studio and played, and probably had the thing rolling.
Yeah.
Right. Had the film rolling, was probably. And just like played around with sounds and found some stuff that worked. I imagine that's probably how he scored this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
That one to me sounded like it really sounded like footsteps. I was like,
Yeah.
almost like, did they mix in like literal like Foley? I mean, it was so. Yeah, I don't know, and it was also like the red color palette was there too. Like it was all very very frantic and like fever dreamy.
Yeah, it was so interesting. Yeah, so yeah, that's what was interesting about the tabla track through the whole thing, is that the whole thing felt very dreamy, and also, listen, I've studied this music, only for like 6 or 7 years or so, and 8 years, and but still, it doesn't like necessarily. I don't have like a huge cultural connection to this instrument, or like, what I'm saying. So like in some of this way, throughout this episode, some of the music didn't cue what was, for me, at least
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
didn't have that same effect of like really cueing emotionally what was happening in the show. You know what I mean? It didn't carry the emotion of the show in some ways. Maybe I say the tabla tarang part, definitely, because we've got like an actual melody happening, right?
Yeah.
But in some ways, like it's created like this kind of like what's the word, just really interesting, almost cerebral approach to the whole thing, as opposed to like, I'm just so used to like a full orchestral score that's really hitting me right in like exactly what my cultural emotional feeling, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it was such an interesting out there choice for this type of media that I'm used to, that that entire like the whole fight scene felt almost cerebral more than emotional. Like it felt like
almost because you studied it, because interesting.
probably that too, right? Probably that too. But also, it just didn't have those like, it didn't have those like dun 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 dun. It didn't have like the standard like.
Yeah. Okay.
But in some ways, it's less interesting and less cool and less like. But I just maybe I didn't. I don't. We're just so trained by this type of media, I think, or at least me. I'm so trained to just expect a certain type of score for this type of action, for this kind of thing. I'm like, and so when it's not there and it's something different and something very, very different, it's a kind of, it really throws me off in terms of like how I experience the medium, as opposed to, if this was just a standard orchestral score, it'd just be like, I could just focus on the action more, because I'm so used to that music being there, that type of music being there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't necessarily share
I don't
it.
have the same experience, but it makes sense. How do you feel about it, Justin, or anyone in chat? How do you, how does the music? Does certain music throw you off more, or like make you pay less attention? What about you, Justin?
I guess it depends on what it is and what I'm watching. I mean, I definitely, in the same way that James is talking about, I come to expect a Star Wars score or a full orchestra, or especially when kind of in a realm that we are so familiar with, because been a fan of Star Wars since
Right.
before I can remember, kind of a thing. So I'm always very used to that. So for this particular episode, hearing a tabla, just as a tabla and Indian music enthusiast, with like 2, 3, 4 classes at CalArts, kind of a thing, where I just barely touched the tip of the iceberg of that is kind of a thing. It was, I mean, so cool to hear such a different choice.
Was it more cerebral for you too?
That's what I've been kind of thinking about. I don't think I had probably more of an emotional response in the sense that with it being different and being an instrument that I know nothing about but love so much, it was kind of that excited me, and it kind of got me to listen to the score and watch the imagery in a different way, other than the traditional dun 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 in the battle. Instead, in the battle, we get this dun. It's almost like suspense for me. I was like, ooh, something a little, like, what's gonna happen? Dun, dun, dun. It's like this is just different. It was like it was allowing me to see it and hear it in a very different way.
Yeah.
And even with the more the melodies that came out, kind of a thing. Because when I first heard this, I thought it was like, okay, this is a lot of really cool samples. But then remembering, oh wait, no, we can tune tabla.
Right.
We can do all these things, and tabla tarang exists, and I have seen that before, kind of a thing. So that became more of the cerebral challenge for me of like envisioning U-zhaan either with all these tabla around him or sitting there going dung, record, dung,
right,
dung, dung, kind of a thing.
So my experience listening was also like I was able to immerse myself way more in this one because of the lack of orchestral and whatever. And also I think because there is also a lot more silence. And I felt the same way about The Elder.
Yeah.
And it was, even though like obviously the scoring was very different in this one and The Elder, but both of them did like use more negative space, I think, in general. Like if we compare it, like the twins would be like the extreme other example of it, like back to back, like no silence, no break. Whereas like this Akakiri and The Elder both did have quite a bit of time with no music at all. And I think for me, maybe it's because like it's easy for me to be like so pitch oriented and like harmony, like melody and all that stuff. I think maybe for me, as a violinist, it was like nice to not hear that. Yeah. And so, I mean, James coming from a percussion background, where sometimes James has mentioned on other episodes, like, oh, well, the beat wasn't like that interesting, or like the drums weren't that like whatever. We're maybe swapping places here. Where maybe I was like, oh, thank God, there's no like, I'm not like burdened by, because when I listen to other music, I'm like, all right, this chord progression, like, okay, I know exactly what kind of modulation this is. Like, it all fits like it's very hard to like surprise me on a like harmonic level. And so it was nice to not be burdened by that.
So funny. I feel like this episode was like, I almost felt it's like the Truman Show or something. I was like, what is going on? Like, am I me? Is this episode for me?
I mean, actually, as soon as I watched it, I texted James. I was like, I think I texted the group chat. I was like, that last episode, it's all James.
I'm like, what is going? Yeah, I was like, what is happening? Especially because I'm watching this now as somebody that it like regularly contributes to a Star Wars music podcast. I was like, it'd be one thing if I was just
an episode actually.
It kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, I have to talk. Well, it was kind of gnarly.
Okay, we got to talk about the turn that the music makes at the end.
Yeah.
Because, well, that sort of like blew my mind at the end. So at the end of the episode, just the end of Akakiri, and the end of Visions as a whole was just like so surprising for so many reasons, like just that it leaves you there. And it's like the story takes a turn, like just the ending of the series as in general, and then the fact that the tabla beat then becomes like infused with, you know, way heavier like electronics, where it really becomes like a groove of like a different, you know, it leaves the realm of traditional, right, and becomes this like other thing. Oh, Justin, do you have?
I think I got this one. I think I have this one.
Sick.
Yeah. Sick. It's awesome, Justin.
That's
It's
so
amazing.
cool.
I would let me 1 second, real quick. 1 second. Oh, come on.
I think
see this is
Akakiri was probably. I feel like this might have been. I don't know. I haven't really talked to like that many people about it, but I feel like this might be an episode that some people loved and some people were like, "What the f? Like, this is where we end? What?"
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I loved it is that it was like a what?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we yeah, no, there's not a whole lot. I mean, within the visual media, it's always like, I don't know. I like it when a bad guy wins sometimes.
But did a bad guy
in
win?
movies?
What do you think?
I mean, let's see. What was it? The king's sister, Masago, I believe was her name, which is also a fish egg. I think in Japanese that's the fish, the fish eggs that they put on food. And then the princess's name was Miso, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it was Misa.
Misa. Oh, Misa. I thought it was Miso. Misa. Oh, I missed that one then. Oh well. But the king's sister overthrows everything, and then gains an apprentice at the end.
Yeah.
She Palpatines him.
She Palpatines him. We get to see this force thing bring her back to life, which did we ever see in the Star Wars movies? We only heard about it, but was there ever? Oh wait, no. At the very end of the Last Jedi, right? No, the
literally bringing someone back. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but we didn't get to see the fulfillment of what Anakin thought that he would get when he turned the dark side.
Which makes me wonder if it was a trick.
I don't know. At the time. Oh, actually, well,
in this episode,
I'm thinking of the Darth Plagueis novel, but that's not canon anymore. Or whatever. But yeah, they had never like really he was still kind of figuring out how to do it. It's not like he knew exactly how to save Padme at the time. It was sort of like a.
And what was interesting?
Providence, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it was
kind of like monkey's paw.
Masago was just immediately like able to do it.
Exactly, and how quickly Tsubaki turned. He goes through this whole episode saying, "There's no fate. We determine our own destinies." Blah 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 blah. And they keep saying, "Oh, it's prophesized you'll fall. It's prophesized you're gonna turn." All these things, and then it's just like at the end here, you just, all right, I accept this.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like those tablet beats were too infectious. He's just like, I gotta go. He's like, I gotta go to the dark side. They've got like grooves over there. I just wanted to throw this out there real quick. And challenge this, and I don't think there's, other than maybe an 808 bass, but I have a feeling that's not 808, and he actually just tuned his low drum to a bunch of different pitches. But I'm almost sure that would, unless that's an 808 bass, there's no other electronic sounds on that.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think there were either.
It's all this being pitched and brought in different out, and like I said, sampled and or in a range, but I think it's all sampled tabla. And then there's this instrument called kanjira that he's playing, and that's that shaker instrument, which is basically an instrument. I don't have it. I wish I was like, oh man, why don't I have a kanjira? I want to show that on screen. But it's basically, it's like a tambourine. It's got one jingle on it, one little jingle, and you play it with one hand, and you get that shaking sound going on in this whole groove.
Sort of like
And
a
so
snare, or sorry, not a snare. Taking the place
kind
of
of
like a hi-hat, or
yeah. I mean, it's just it's like it's basically playing a tambourine on its side,
oh,
and
I
you're
see, I
playing
see.
low sounds. And but there's only one jingle, so it's a very focused sound as opposed to a bunch of really loud jingles. It's just one little jingle, and then you can bend the pitch of the drum like that, and you hold it like this, and you play it with one hand. And dudes that play that instrument, dudes meaning all genders of dudes, like just completely like their right hand is just insane, like because it's all one-handed, so it's like but he's got like one hand. It's insane.
Okay, so the electronic, the quote-unquote electronic beats, they mostly read that way because of the like idiom of the groove that they are.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
timbres
doing.
of it, right? But
Yeah.
those are all. I'm
But it's
listening
like
to it again. I'm
evoking a
almost
different style of music.
I'm almost positive that's all real instruments. But he's just, obviously it's also just incredibly well recorded. Like it's just like whenever I listen to recordings of tabla like this, and when I think about my own recording projects, I'm like, man, I need to learn more about EQing this instrument, because some people can get these instruments to just sound like unbelievable, and I don't really have those types of mixing skills.
And mics,
But
like the whole thing.
yeah, and the
Having
mics
the right
too.
mic
All,
in the right room.
probably all 414s, probably all AKG 414s.
Oh, yeah.
I bet. Yeah,
I remember doing the live tabla shows from CalArts and just the adventure it was to get that whole instrument into the mix, make it sound good, and give proper monitoring back, because that was always a nightmare.
Monitoring.
I always used to think in the back of my mind that the people that run sound and learn how to run sound at CalArts must come out of there like complete monsters at mixing, because they have to mix like such crazy instruments all the time. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And then move to jazz ensemble the next night, and then the next night it's gamelan, and you're like, okay, everything's up, everything's loud.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason Justin has run live sound for me a few times. And like in my recitals where we had click track for people too.
So much.
The part where the beat changes, or like where the groove changes, which is when he decides to join the Sith Lord. Symbolically, like that choice, what do you make of it? Or like, what did it evoke for you? I guess as I'm saying this, and like we're talking about destiny and everything, it was like that rang to me so much more like programming, and in so many ways, it's like at that point he was no longer himself, really. Like he just was like following her, like okay, and he was just like following into this literally new groove. And I think I do like how the music completely, like the fact that the music changes there kind of makes me feel like it reflects his internal state.
Internal state. Can you elaborate on that? His internal state how?
Like the music changes. Like the music seems anchored to Tsubaki. So like when Tsubaki's like fighting and it's all like, and when Tsubaki's having the flashback and it's like, it's more like that's when it gets a little bit, rings as more tonal, and all this stuff in between, also with the like battle cries and everything. When he changes to like accepting his destiny, or going with the Sith Lord and sort of stopping making choices for himself, like I see, like that's, you said, I forgot who, I think James said it, not relenting, surrendering, surrendering to this other path is like when the music just sort of totally changed from being this into that groove, that
right. And it's the only episode out of this series that ends kind of like this, in terms of like the dark side conquers all in some way, or like Justin said, like it's like the enemy kind of wins, which I agree. I know what you mean. What you're like, did they? But I mean, it's kind of it's like it's what's the word? It's a foreboding ending, but in a weird like yeah, you're right. Like the rhythm is kind of like it's like he's like in a trance, kind of like he's like, and he's surrendering into his dark side to make
The dark
the
side of
future
pop
that he wants.
music.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go and like superimpose this beat over Revenge of the Sith when Anakin goes to the
Yeah.
dark side. Like he's like, you are Darth Vader.
That's really funny. So
That'd be
the way
great.
that the end, okay, so the end, like it goes from like cool blues to like red by the end, and here is like I think we shouldn't underplay like what actually happens in the psyche of Tsubaki here, because it's not that he's like he's not framing it as surrendering, going with his destiny or whatever. In the moment, it's like he can have all these ideals of like he can have all these ideas of there's no such thing as destiny, like he can have in a perfect world, but when actually faced with the reality of, oh my god, I like killed my love, like I killed her, like when actually faced with that super grim reality and
Right.
given the choice to like given the chance to bring her back to life, it all those ideas of destiny and all that fancy talk goes out the window at that point, you
Right.
know? It's like
Right.
he can choose to save her. He can save her. And it's not even that someone else killed her, like they make it super like really make it super personal by making it like that he literally accidentally killed her. And that's like I don't
Right.
know. I can't think of like a worse nightmare scenario really.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
so in that case, it's almost like I like how these stories kind of force us to confront reality and confront our ideas in different ways when actually thrust into different situations. Because I think, I mean, I think a lot of us, myself definitely, have certain ideas about how we think that we are and how we would like to be. But sometimes when faced
Sure.
with like an actual situation where like actually you're
Yeah.
in that, it's different. And so this is his point where he's actually learning the choice, and he does bring her back to life, but he sacrifices his own like soul to do that. And so it's almost like an Orpheus in the underworld thing too, right? Where like
Ooh.
he brings her back to life, but that also means he can't have her anymore, and because he's sacrificed his soul.
That's cool. Is that indicated at the end though that he can't that they're not going to be together anymore?
Well, because he's dark side, and because he has had to accept that he's his brainwashing in order to do that. So like she doesn't. No, it's not. It's not like. Would Padme still want to be with dark side Anakin? No. And would Anakin even be able to like love someone once he's dark side? You know, it's kind of like
Right.
you can't have everything. Is kind of the point. Like choices have consequences, and you can't. There is really no world in which all of these things can coexist.
Right. It's heavy. It's heavy.
Star Wars is heavy. I mean, this is like this is like Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. It's so much like Revenge of the Sith. If you know.
Except Padme.
You know what it reminds me of?
Yeah.
Did either of you ever play Revenge of the Sith, the video game back in the day?
No.
Okay, there was I don't know why they did this, but they added like an option where you could basically like Anakin like beats Obi-Wan and like and doesn't get disfigured by the lake, and he like and then he kills the Emperor, like, and then he like runs the galaxy himself, and it's like an alternate universe option in the video game.
Does he? Does it?
No, he's like he just like embraces the dark side and then like is the Emperor like himself, and that's like an alternate ending that you can have when the Revenge of the Sith video game came out, you could do that, and so this is kind of like if Anakin like didn't like raised his wife from the dead and like figured it out, you know, and you know in some ways. I mean, he doesn't actually, you know, what's his name? What's his name?
Tsubaki.
The guy.
Tsubaki.
Tsubaki. Okay. Tsubaki doesn't get everything he wants, but he he's like he kind of succeeds in the ultimate, because Anakin's more of a victim of like the monkey's paw, which is like he sacrifices his soul, but he still doesn't even get what he wanted. He loses what he wanted in doing that, right? Like that's what's the indication in Revenge of the Sith that says like Anakin. The reason why Anakin, I mean, maybe I think that's what the Emperor tells him, like feeds him that line, like,
Yeah,
oh,
I think
like
it's implied
you
that.
you killed her in your rage, but like that's the idea, like that's what he has in his mind. Is like, hey, I tried to save her by going to the dark side, but in going to the dark side, I actually killed her, which is like the classic monkey's paw, like just the sheer, thing of you trying to get what you want actually causes that thing to slip out of your fingers, right?
And in this case, even though it seems like he actually realizes what Anakin didn't get to have, he still loses. He still loses. So like even though he saves her, it still doesn't result in the happy ending. And like she's like, why? She's like, what have you done? Like, it's not like she gets revived and then they embrace. It's like he's already pledged himself to this new master. I don't know. It's like so. It is so. It's super dark and it's super dark. I'm curious. I mean, what do people like? Let us know in the chat what you thought of this episode in general, or Visions as a whole. Did you have any sound design things that you wanted to mention about this episode? Like, I'll say that I loved the rain.
Rain was cool. Her Misa's arrow for some reason sticks out. She shoots one little crossbow and it's like this cool whistle. It just
the whistle.
Thought that was really cool. And then every time he has like that migraine vision thing, we get these
tinnitus.
like high pitch frequency, almost like harmonics.
Yeah,
come in and out and have this little waver to them. I thought, and that came in like 3-4 times in the episode. A little bit different each time, but the same idea, high pitch with a couple other frequencies popping in and out. I thought that was really, really cool. Classic migraine sound though.
Oh,
yes. There, kind of a thing.
It's the concept of being like plagued by visions is a very it's a very Star Wars. Like we see that many times throughout Star Wars. With Anakin and the visions. I'm trying to think. Do the visions ever like turn out positively?
Oh, I have this wonderful vision of my beautiful future. But they're always terrible visions of the future.
Dark visions.
Yeah. Doesn't someone in High Republic have visions? Is it Bell? No. It's Wreath. I'm sorry. There's someone in High Republic who gets visions too.
Don't say anything.
Oh, okay. And then
no, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about because it's the first book, which I did read. It's what's his name? It starts with an E, and he's like
Elzar?
Avar Kritz's. Yeah, he has that vision at the end of the first book.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, vision. Hey, visions.
Hey.
Plagued by visions.
Oh man, what a way to end! What a way to end Star Wars Visions. So yeah, it was a good run.
This was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of variety, and that's what I really appreciated in it. It's really good to see all these different voices, and this would never happen. There was no. I don't think so. I do not think that we would have like a straight up like really like not just like it's not even just like there's a serious well-studied tabla player that put together like a very well-informed score of the tradition. It wasn't just using it as textures. That's an often unfortunate thing that happens with traditional instruments that are not from Western countries. Like they'll just put them in there as little peppering things, and it's not really like this guy is just like straight up playing tabla, And when like what other kind of show that would be like a little bit more quote unquote high profile in terms of like the Book of Boba Fett or something that has a little bit more like a bigger, larger audience? When would they take a risk like that? I don't know if they would,
I think this is the importance of like broadening your base of like who you are hiring as composers.
Yeah.
And getting people who are like, I don't know. I don't want to say like smaller creators, but like people who are maybe less jack of all trades, which a lot of composers in the Hollywood scope and in the film scope are trained to be sort of jack of all trades, to be able to take on many genres and do things at a fast deadline and make those shortcuts. And that's like what they're good at. And there's a reason that they do what they do. But that's why you sometimes take a chance and have Daft Punk do your score, or have like a tabla specialist do your score, or like someone different who can also like project a whole scope of their emotions, and they can also score a full emotional journey, but but just with a different set of tools. And then it allows us to then hear like the tabla not just as like always evoking one specific emotion because one composer always uses it in this context, but then just like challenges us to experience the tabla in such a deeper, like more broad, like detailed, nuanced sense, where like it can be the party, it can score a party, and it can score like a death, and it can score like a battle, and it can score a flashback with a lover. Like it can do all of those things if you give it the space to. And like I don't know, that's why I'm always just like, oh, I hope it's a composer I don't know. Like I always want to hear like a new voice who like maybe says something different, and maybe says something that's not necessarily like, I don't know, someone who's not an obvious Star Wars choice. Because I still feel like I felt the same with Tatooine Rhapsody, which was like so not Star Wars, but it also felt like it felt so genuine in what it was, and that I love that.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was formulated, by a committee. Right. I will now allow this score to be formulated by a committee. All we need is
Is this our ending music? Seriously. All right. I think we have I think we have a spam chatter. Wait.
Varktech.
I don't know. It might be. Maybe not. Hello, Brittany.
Who knows what that means?
Who knows? That's gonna haunt me.
If it's something that we're not in the know of.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
Nothing terrible. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for everyone who's been watching
thank you.
The Visions coverage that we have dribbled out over 3 months.
Yeah. really stretching that content.
Yeah.
We will be back to cover Book of Boba. And just stay tuned for when those are scheduled on the page. But there will be Book of Boba talk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And of course, thank you to Justin and James.
Woo! Thank you, Xanthe. This was so much fun.
Fun to do with you too.
Thank you.
And have a good week, I guess, everyone. Have good holidays.
Yeah.
Have good,
good
rest up before Book of Boba.
Yes.
Got to do our Mandalorian rewatches and everything.
Yeah.
I definitely need to. So, yeah, I should probably schedule that into my calendar so I'm not like, oh crap, I have to binge like 2 seasons tonight. But yeah, let's do some outro music.
All right.